Welcome to the Classroom Learning Series with Green and Healthy Schools, Wisconsin. Thanks for joining us today, and thank you to our series sponsors, Skyward.
Since our humble beginnings as a small family business, Skyward has evolved into a global technology leader serving more than 2,000 school districts. At Skyward, we are proud to support the initiatives of the Green and Healthy Schools Classroom Learning Series.
Today we're going on a virtual field trip to the Goodman Youth Farm, and we're going to learn about farming in the fall, presented by Travis Maloney from Rooted.
Hi, my name is Travis Maloney. I'm the Education Manager at Rooted. We're a nonprofit organization based on the north side of Madison. We're at the Goodman Youth Farm, which is a half-acre vegetable farm situated in Madison. We typically see around 4,000 student visits in a year and produce about 3,000 pounds of produce. Some of the produce is used on site in our educational programs. The rest is donated to a local food pantry. Today we're going to be taking a virtual tour of the farm. It's October 7th today, so we're getting later into the fall. We're going to show you what we still have to harvest, the steps that we take to winterize the farm and get it ready for the winter, and we're also going to plant our last crop of the year, which is garlic. So we're going to start off by showing you what we still have in the field. We're starting off in our raised beds here. We planted these raised beds, sometime in early September, I believe. This first bed we have here is mustard greens and arugula, so we would cut these off and use them in salads. And then moving over to these two beds, we have some radishes. Here's a radish that I pulled out earlier. Radishes are one of the fastest maturing crops we can grow at about 28 days. They also prefer cooler weather. So radishes are always a nice crop to grow in the fall, in that they have a really quick turnaround time, and they also prefer the cooler weather that we're seeing in the fall. Next, we're going to walk down our main path, and we're going to check out some other crops that we still have. To my right here, we have some celery. To my left, we have Kohlrabi. In front of me here we have fennel. Next up we have Brussels sprouts here. This is part of the brassica family. The brassicas include broccoli, kale, kohlrabi, Brussels sprouts. This family of vegetables is a bit more tolerant to frost. Brussels sprouts actually become sweeter during the first few frosts, so we try to leave them in the field as much as possible, and then the bulk of them will be growing down here. And when we're harvesting Brussels sprouts, we just snap them off like so. Moving down, we have Swiss chard, which has been in the field all year. You get new growth in the center where you pick off leaves like so. We have a few varieties of lettuce that we planted in September. So we have a darker green variety. We have a light green variety here that unfortunately got away from us a little bit. When lettuce gets too warm, it does something called bolting, so it'll get taller in preparation to make seed. So if you take a look at this lettuce, it's much taller than the lettuce next to it. The problem with tall lettuce once it starts to bolt is it starts to get really bitter, so the flavor isn't as good. And then to my right over here, we have another variety of lettuce, a red lettuce. And then moving forward, we have a few beds of kale. We have 1, 2, 3 beds of kale and collard greens. Kale is a great crop in that we plant it really early in the spring. As long as we're harvesting it properly, we can harvest it throughout the whole year. So if you take a look at this stalk here, all these points right here is where we've harvested kale. So in the beginning of the season, we'll be harvesting down here, and as the plant gets higher and higher, we just keep harvesting it. As long as we're harvesting leaves from the bottom and we're not picking out the center leaves of the plant where new growth is occurring, we can pick kale all year. And then we're going to walk to the far side of our garden where we can show you one more crop that's growing. The last crop we're going to show you of things that are currently growing are our carrots. We planted our carrots around late July, early August for a fall harvest, and they're just about ready to harvest right now. We plant our carrots in 3 rows, and as you can see, we've had some people out here harvesting them. We harvested some today. Let's see if I can find any that are loose enough to pull out. So here's a carrot. Obviously we're going to want to wash these off before we send them to the food pantry. Here is our berry patch. Berry season is a bit earlier in the season, more like June, July. So here we have some mulberry trees. We have a pawpaw right here. Under our mulberry trees we have a few currant bushes and gooseberries. To my left here, the Goodman Youth Farm also has a number of community garden spaces where members of the community can come and garden. So to my left here would be all of our community garden spaces. The next topic we're going to go over is cover cropping. Cover cropping refers to a crop that we're growing just to cover the soil. So when we're growing cover crop, we're not necessarily growing something to harvest it, we're just covering the soil. So if we look over here, you notice one of our cover crops, which is oats, peas, and radishes. This is something that we planted, let's see, probably early September. What will happen with the oats and peas is it will continue to grow. Oats, peas, and radishes are a winter kill cover crop, meaning that over the winter it will die. What we'll be left with in the spring is dried out plant material, which will act as a mulch. We can leave it there or incorporate it into the soil when we're ready to plant next spring. What will happen with the radishes that are in here are a type of daikon radish. They have a really big root. What will happen is those will die over the winter. They'll decompose, which will draw some earthworms up into the soil. We'll get some decomposition and some earthworms work in the soil. And then to my right over here, we have white clover. This is a cover crop that's going to come back for us every year. We planted white clover here because we took this small block out of production this year. As you can see, it does a really good job of weed suppression. It makes a nice carpet. It can withstand some foot traffic, so we can walk over it and it'll sort of bounce back. Another added bonus to white clover is that when it's flowering, it provides a good source of forage for the honeybees. So you can see a couple flowers here. This is sort of out of the season of flowering for white clover, but I have seen a few honeybees poking around in these flowers over here, and we'll check out the honeybees at the end of this presentation. And then we're going to walk back down to this end of the garden. For this section, we're going to show you how we plant the last cover crop that we use, which is winter wheat. After a certain point in the year, it gets a little late to plant oats and peas, so we move into winter wheat. Winter wheat is a winter hardy crop, meaning that it will come back for us next year. What we can do with that, we can let it grow a little bit, then we'll mow it down. We can till it into the soil, incorporating some green plant material, which will give us some nitrogen and organic matter in the soil. So here's the seed that we're using today. We use a pretty low-tech method of spreading seed, which is just broadcasting by hand. So what I'm going to do is just take handfuls of winter wheat, throw it into the soil. Winter wheat can sometimes be difficult to incorporate into the soil in that it kind of acts like a grass. When we till it in, sometimes we have trouble with it growing back. So mowing and tilling is one way we can terminate or incorporate the cover crop into the soil. Another thing we can do is use tarps to put over our winter wheat that's growing. Let it sit for a few weeks, and that will sort of kill the grass, dry it out, and we'll have an easier time tilling it into the soil. So after I'm done here, I'll come back with a rake all this in, give it a little water. We'll get a little growth before all of our growing activity slows down, and then we'll get it back in the spring. Here's another section of clover that we used. This is Clover Pathway, so we mostly use wood chip paths in our garden, but as I said, clover stands up good to foot traffic. I think it looks nice, and it's a little bit less maintenance than wood chip paths, so we decided to convert this path to clover this year. Another topic that's sort of adjacent to cover cropping is the concept of crop rotation. So crop rotation means that we're moving where we grow our crops year after year. 1/5 of our garden is always in cover crop. This block right here that we're looking at was in cover crop all year. The only thing that we plant into it is garlic, and then next year it will be alliums, or things in the onion family. And then our cover crop next year will move down that way into the brassicas section. It's important to implement both cover cropping and crop rotation to increase soil health. Growing vegetables takes a lot out of the soil, and part of our jobs as farmers is to also give our land a rest every once in a while and put some nutrients back into the soil. And two ways we do that are through cover cropping and crop rotation. We're going to move just down here. We're going to show you the process of planting garlic. Garlic is this is the latest crop that we plant. When we're running field trips here, usually our final field trips, we involve our kids in the garlic planting process. We had one small group here yesterday which planted one bed of garlic for us. I'm just going to finish up another row so you can see the process of how it's done and what we do. So garlic is kind of cool in that We're going to plant 1 clove of garlic. It is going to sit over the winter. Next year it's going to shoot out, and by July we're going to get a full head of garlic. So garlic is nice to save as a seed, and that it multiplies really easily. So here at the youth farm, our beds are 50 feet long and 30 inches wide. We use this planting rope both to help us keep a straight line and to space our plants or seeds out evenly. Here we have a 1-foot planting rope, so each red piece of tape represents 1 foot. We're going to plant our garlic at 6 inches apart, which means that there's going to be 1 clove of garlic at every red piece of tape and also 1 in between. So when I'm planting garlic, I want to make sure I have this side down. Pointy side's going to be up, the root side's going to be down. So when it grows, the roots are going to grow out of this bottom side, and then the shoot is going to come up this top side. So before we started this video, we dug our trench. When we're planting our garlic, again, this side's going to go down. We want to make sure it's at least 2 inches under the furrow. I'm going to press down, make sure it has good soil contact. So there's my one between the 2 red pieces. Red piece of tape in between, red piece of tape in between, red piece of tape in between, and red piece of tape. And then after this video, what we're going to do is we're going to cover up this entire row like so. We are going to take a bale of straw and we're going to cover it up like we did for this row. And then for our final stop on our virtual farm tour, we're going to head over to our bees and take a peek under our lid. So at this point in the year, we've done our final honey extraction. There's not a lot of sources of nectar and pollen for them to forage for, so they're largely sort of staying in the hive. If we look over here, we might see some activity in the hive. There might be some small sources of nectar and pollen to collect, but they're largely done putting stuff away. So part of my job as a beekeeper at this point in the year is to make sure they have enough food to survive the winter and to winterize the hives. Because honeybees are not native to North America, they need a little bit more help from us surviving the winter, which I'll explain. So we're not going to really tear apart the hives. I just like to pop the top, and we're going to look in the feeder so I can show you what we're feeding the bees, and then we'll talk a little bit about what the bees do over the winter. Here we have the outer cover, just going to keep the elements out of our hives. Inside that will be an inner cover, and this feeder is where we're going to be feeding our sugar syrup. So this sugary stuff right here might be a little difficult to see with the shadows here. This is a sugar syrup that I make. The ratio of sugar to water is 2 to 1. So I use, let's see, I think it's 8 cups of sugar to 8 cups of water. So if you look really closely, you can see the bees here feeding on the sugar. Honeybees need roughly 60 pounds of honey to survive the winter. Two big issues I can potentially have with overwintering them is starvation and moisture issues. So what I want to do is I want to tip my hive up a little bit so that this section will be pointing forward a little bit. Over the winter, honeybees form a winter cluster. The queen will be at the very center of the hive, and the rest of the bees will cluster around her. They will spend the winter just surviving and feeding off of their honey stores for the winter. They keep their winter cluster at about 95 degrees Fahrenheit, which can create some moisture. So the moisture will travel up the hive. It can hit the top, and then it could potentially drip back down. If it is going to drip back down, I don't want it to drip in the back of the hive. I want it to come out of the front of the hive. So that's why I want to tip it forward a little bit. We'll take one last look at our bees before we shut them up. The last thing I want to do is insulate the hives. In Wisconsin, we have very cold winters. So we are going to wrap our hives up with a special beehive wrap. That'll keep our hives nice and insulated and make sure that they're not going to freeze if we get those like really cold days. I'm going to hand the camera back to Brian. All right, well, we hope you enjoyed this virtual tour of the youth farm, and we will hopefully see you soon out at the farm. Bye.
Thanks, Travis, for the tour. What a wonderful resource for those schools that are in your area. And still plenty to do in the fall, even though the weather's starting to get cold. For those of you watching who may have some school garden programs or are interested in having more school gardening, these are two wonderful resources within our state to check out. So the Wisconsin School Garden Network and also the Master Gardener Program. Many counties within Wisconsin have Master Gardener volunteers, so check with them if you want some help in your gardens. Thanks so much for joining us today for the Classroom Learning Series, and be sure to check out all of the videos in this series on our channel. Have a great day.